fast forward any come over to social so I'm say Osei AGH politics avenue political stories training because make headlines ne jemre na yedi bi exum wa say ni dem young rock ma afina wa rema Mr. So which man subscribe to the channel it notification be share na afofro so inside into me inkabi yemo writing simo na medu ewra eye NDC aso ye ene anwumrei na the omni say eye 13th John Evans at a Mills anniversary commemorative lecture no etimi ekoso ne ihu Charlotte Osei na o deliver a speech na speech o deliver no nya asem koto akra ema yenuanom eye NDC folk kudam bi ebo mu nsem ade mama me no yeah Mr. say at this point in time yemon room ne hwe some of the emotional speech former EC boss Charlotte Osei enso etimi deliver o wase
1961 and 1963. At the University of Ghana, he completed his Bachelor of Law degree and Professional Law certificate in 1967. Mills's pursuit of higher education took him to the London School of Economics for his LLM in 1968, and then to the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London, where he earned his PhD in law in 1971 at the remarkably young age of 27. His selection as a Fulbright scholar to Stanford Law School in 1971 was not merely an academic achievement. It was a testament to Prof's character and potential. The Fulbright program chose him not just for his intellectual capabilities, but for his potential to be a bridge builder and a leader. At Stanford, his colleagues remember him as someone who listened more than he spoke, who asked thoughtful questions, and who approached every challenge with both intellectual rigor and human compassion. He was, in the words of one Stanford professor, a scholar gentleman in the truest sense of the term. Perhaps no quality defined Mills the man more than his humility. In a continent where political leaders are often known for high-handed approaches to power, Mills remained remarkably grounded throughout his life and presidency. His humility was not weakness, it was strength under control. This humility was evident in his famous declaration that I have always said that I will be president for all Ghanaians, whether they voted for me or not, and without consideration for which part of the country they come from. These were not mere campaign promises, they were the words of a man who truly understood that leadership is service and not privilege. His approach to leadership emboldened me personally on 2 occasions to tell him, while he was president, that I thought a decision he took was wrong, and in another case, the decision was unfair because he had not listened to the other party. Typical of Prof, he took that criticism very calmly. We argued as lawyers, and he told me, when you're president, you see things very differently. Eventually, in one of the matters, months later, I got a message from him. He said, you were right and I was wrong. That was an emotional moment for me and a great lesson in leadership. And I did learn that power that fears criticism is already bankrupt. In an era when political integrity often seemed like an oxymoron, Mills stood as a beacon of moral leadership. His integrity was not situational, it was absolute. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, current president of Nigeria, best captured this aspect of Prof in his tribute when Prof died. He said, President Atta Mills was a man with a profound, comprehensive intellect. Unlike many individuals whose public courage as a politician diverges negatively from their private persona, the private and public morals and practices of this man were undifferentiated. There was no seam dividing the public official from the private man. He was guided by a moral compass that did not waver according to the circumstance. Before President Tinubu knew this, those of us who were his students knew this already. Interesting story from first year. we had decided to go to London over the summer holidays to job. My first challenge, of course, was getting a visa. I went for the visa interview, and the official interviewing me asked me what I was going to do in London for 3 months. I told him I was going to see the sights. And he said, you're a law student? I said, yes. He said, okay. Can I advise you? I said, sure. He said, before you become a lawyer, make sure you become a better liar. I said, thank you. I got my visa, and with my roommates, we went off to London to job. Then the university reopened, and we were late. I managed to get into Ghana before my 2 roommates, and I managed to get myself registered for second year. My 2 roommates came back, and they were told by the dean that they had been deferred for 1 year. One of my roommates, Irama, was actually a niece of Professor Mills, who was vice dean. So we figured, go to Prof's home, go and plead, and of course, if Prof makes a case for Irama, it means everybody else can sneak through. So Irama goes to Mills's house that evening and comes back to our room, very, very angry. He said, what did Prof say? Oh, Prof said, it's only 1 year. It doesn't matter. You can study French or computer during that 1 year. So at that point, everybody else knew that there was no hope. Irama spent the year studying French. So we knew that his approach to corruption was uncompromising. So when he said, I would not spare any government official, be it past or present, who would be found guilty of embezzling state funds, it was not political rhetoric. It was a moral conviction that guided his administration. Prof was also fundamentally a man of peace. This was not passive pacifism, but active peacemaking. He understood that peace was not merely the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice, understanding, and mutual respect. His philosophy of peace was captured in his words. We are going to ensure that there is peace before, during, and after the election. Because when there is no peace, it's not the elites who will suffer. It's the ordinary people who have elected us into office. When we were students, Prof told my class, this was a peacemaker, that as far as possible, we should make sure we are not the reason for anyone losing their job. Many of my classmates remember this caution. We can't remember what we were talking about. Later in my public life, trying to be the good mentee, I applied this advice to my own significant harm. But the good thing was, Prof was right. There was peace because I took the path of peace. So, peaceful Prof still wins the day. But there's also another story one of the students told me that showed me that although it was good that Prof was peaceful, Prof would have been a very poor litigation lawyer. So Commonwealth boys went on a process and misbehaved very badly. In their words, they disciplined a particular student. So the head of their JCR was in trouble. And the student who had been disciplined was a relative of Prof Mills and went to hire Prof as his lawyer. Prof calls the dean of students and says he wants to see the Commonwealth president and ask him that, you people went to do ABC? And he said, yes. Prof said, let me advise you. Go quickly to the student who was disciplined and go and beg and make peace. Because I know it was a prank that went too far, but if it goes to court, you guys can be in a lot of trouble. The guy quickly sneaked there. He didn't even tell Prof that he was also the chief choir master. And he went and he apologized and made peace, and that's how the matter died. So most litigation lawyers would know that this is not the path to making money, but that was Prof. But Prof's character was also shaped by his love of sports and by his being a family man and a Christian. He loved sports. Everyone knew this, particularly hockey. He played for the Ghana national hockey team, and he learned valuable lessons about teamwork, discipline, and fair play. The values from the hockey field, working together toward common goals, respecting teammates and opponents, understanding that individual success means nothing without team success, would later inform his political leadership. Most of my law school colleagues would recall male students gathered around Prof after lectures. They were not discussing law or tax. They were discussing football. That was the measure of the man. Behind the public figure was a devoted family man, married to Ernestina Nadu Mills, with son Kofi-san, and many siblings and extended family. His approach to family life reflected the same values that guided his public service: love, respect, commitment, and sacrifice. Mills's character was deeply rooted in his Christian faith as a Methodist. His belief in divine providence gave him strength to persevere through political defeats and personal challenges. He genuinely believed that his talents and opportunities were gifts to be used in service of others and not privileges to be enjoyed for personal benefit. The character of John Atta Mills, the man, created the foundation for everything he would accomplish as a teacher and as a president. His humility made him approachable. His integrity earned him trust across divides. His commitment to peace created stability for progress, and his love of learning inspired others to pursue excellence. For most Ghanaians, lawyers of my generations, we knew Mills more as a teacher. We are very glad that when Professor Mills returned to Ghana after Stanford Law School, he chose the path of academia and did not pursue more lucrative opportunities in private practice or international organizations. Mills' first formal teaching assignment was as a lecturer at the Faculty of Law at the University of Ghana, Legon, and he would spend the next 25 years in this role, rising to associate prof in 1992. But the real measure of Mills, the teacher, lies not in his academic achievements or the many papers that he authored, though they were considerable, but the real measure was the impact he had on the minds and hearts and lives of his students. Mills taught us that reputation built in silence lasts longer than applause. For Prof, the classroom was more than a venue for transmitting information. It was a sacred space where minds were opened, characters were formed, and futures were shaped. Students who attended his law classes remember a professor who demanded excellence but provided the support necessary to achieve it. He had very high expectations, and his marks were usually very low. But he also had high investments in our success. Mills understood that teaching law was not just about imparting legal knowledge, it was about developing legal minds. He taught his students not just what to think, but how to think. He emphasized critical analysis, logical reasoning, and ethical reflection. He wanted his students to understand not just the letter of the law, but its spirit and its purpose. He saw law as a tool for addressing social justice or for enabling social justice and national development. He did not see legal education as merely professional training, but as preparation for service to society. Hence his earlier admonition about not being the cause of anyone losing their job. He also emphasized the importance of integrity in legal practice. He understood that as lawyers, we would face situations where we could choose between personal gain and professional ethics. Through his teaching and personal example, he sought to instill in his students the moral foundation necessary to make the choice. And this teaching went beyond the classroom to his approach to everything. Honorable Nana Oye and her friends were living on campus, and Mills was teaching at the law school. His lectures were at 7 a.m. in the morning because he had to lecture before going to the IRS. And he started giving a group of them lifts to Makola. So when there were 2, it was fine. But as word spread, they became 3, and then 4, and then 5. So now, Prof decided that when he gets there, he's not going to decide who gets into his car. The first ones to arrive gets the lift. And that was Prof. Always fair, even in the little decisions. While he was an excellent classroom teacher, his greatest impact as an educator came through his mentorship relationships with individual students. Prof had an extraordinary ability to identify potential in young people and to nurture that potential through guidance, encouragement, and opportunity. As one of his students in both commercial law and company law, I experienced firsthand the transformative power of Prof's mentorship. Prof saw something in me that I had not yet seen in myself. He challenged me to think more deeply, to write more clearly, and to aspire more boldly. But more than that, Prof believed in me at a time when I was still learning to believe in myself. Mills was particularly committed to mentoring young women in law, recognizing the barriers we faced and the potential it represented. Lady Julia Osei and myself were 2 young women who probably would not have been able to obtain our Master of Laws degrees without the support of Prof Mills. He was a constant referee on every young student applicant for graduate work. Through Prof's support, one of my classmates ended up at Prof's alma mater, the London School of Economics, for his LLM. And Prof helped him to get his first job at the Ghana Stock Exchange when he came back home. And for all the students, Prof did not have to know where we came from, who our parents were. He just helped. Prof was always accessible to his students. When I was at Queen's University in Canada, I worked in the library. And one time they were throwing away all the books where they had additional copies. So I asked them, what were they going to do with the books? They said they were going to be trashed. And I said, oh, could I have them for the law faculty? And they said, yes. So I ended up with 48 boxes of books in my apartment. Now, I didn't know how these books were going to get to Ghana. Every week, my landlord would come and look at the boxes and ask me when the boxes were moving. Eventually, I think Prof was at the IRS at the time. I managed to get a message to Prof that I was about to be kicked out of my apartment with 48 boxes of law books. Prof immediately called the High Commissioner. They sent a van and they picked these 48 boxes of books before my landlord kicked me and the books onto the streets of Kingston, Ontario. That was Prof, always accessible. Beyond all this, Prof was very committed to building the institutional capacity of the Faculty of Law. He wanted Ghanaian students to be able to compete with their counterparts anywhere in the world. But he also wanted us to understand and address the specific legal and development challenges facing Ghana. So as much as Prof would help you to get graduate admissions and go do your masters, Prof would always stay in touch and encourage you to come back home. So his appointment as visiting professor at Temple University in Philadelphia, and he was a visiting lecturer at Leiden University in the Netherlands, enriched his teaching. It also opened up opportunities for us, his students, because most of us got admission to these universities because on the strength of Prof's reference. Prof was also a very kind lecturer. He was one of those lecturers who was always giving lifts to his students. There was one particular lift story that happened in my class that was interesting. Because the 3 parties in this story are now a Court of Appeal judge and two very respected lawyers. I will not mention their names. So, one day, the one who is now a judge was studying at the law library. He took off his shoes while studying and he fell asleep. Another classmate, let's call him J1, goes and picks his shoes. Then he decides to leave the library and hands the shoes over to J2. It was time for a lecture. J2, rather than leaving the shoes in the library, took the shoes to the lecture room. So our current appeal judge had to walk barefoot to the lecture room. So he gets to the lecture room, livid, and sees his shoes with J2. And asked J2 how he got his shoes. J2 said, hey,
to we any somehow which me a course so I watch on us one not so you or how the sense of body in the Domia.
at this time,
Yes, I'm
J1
Roman
is sitting
in some consumers.